This is Conversation with the Popes. My name is Vince.
And I am Michelle, and we have guests with us today.
Yes.
We're going to be talking about expectations in marriage. Last episode, Vince and we talked about our expectations, how we met, and how it affected our relationship after we got married.
Right.
And today we have with us the other popes, Adrian Pope and Brandy Pope.
Yes, welcome.
And welcome. Let's welcome
Hello,
them.
hello.
Howdy, hi.
Yes. So we just thought it would be good to get another perspective on expectations in marriage. Vincent and I will be celebrating 34 years this year. And
Sure about that?
I'm not. It might be 33, but I think it's 34. Yeah,
Well,
I think I'm fairly accurate.
You're going to say 35. How about that?
All right now. Okay. So we're going to hear from them. We have a couple of questions that we're going to ask them just to see the differences in the generations and be able to give another perspective on marriage expectations.
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right, you ready?
Yeah.
Y'all ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So, like I said, Vince and I talked about the examples we had growing up, but married couples, which we didn't have a lot. So I'm going to pose that question to you all, and whoever wants to answer first. What examples did you have in your life of married couples or any type of married life growing up?
Ladies first.
Okay, so for me, growing up my whole life, my mom was a single parent, so I didn't really get a lot of examples of married life through her. But one couple that I got to see married life through a lot was my grandparents. So they were kind of the stepping stones to my idea of what marriage could be or what should be. So yeah, that was basically like the main example that I had growing up was my grandparents. My grandparents have been married, I think, 37 years
Wow.
or something.
That's great.
Along the lines of that. But they're also not each other's first marriage.
Okay.
So my example of marriage was, they had a great marriage, but it took them a few times to get it right, I guess, because my grandfather, I believe, had been married at least one time before. And my grandma had been married twice before.
Now, in that example, did you ever live with them to see them behind closed doors, or was it just seeing them, for different occasions?
Oh, no, I lived with my grandparents for a year when I was in middle school. So I got to see pretty up close and personal how they were in their marriage. I mean, obviously I was a child, so there were certain things they probably didn't give me 100% access to in their marriage, but I did get to see them interacting on like a day-to-day basis. Yeah.
Okay, good. What about you, Adrian?
For me, an example of marriage was, my parents, you guys, but I also got a lot of TV time to myself. So sitcoms, certain movies, I would see certain relationships and families, and I knew that was what I wanted. And I kind of wanted to experience that sooner than later. I think I was thinking about marriage at a young age for some reason, and a family and all of that. But seeing you guys do it for so many years and having both of you guys in my life, it was what I wanted for me and whoever I ended up with. Can't say that I saw that in my relationships because, they clearly didn't work out. But it got to a point where, because I knew what I wanted, it was just, God's way of saying she isn't the one, or this isn't the right relationship. So yeah, you guys in television.
Okay. Now, Adrian, you mentioned how your examples kind of design or created this desire in you. Now, Brandy, did you have a desire for marriage, to get married? Was that something you thought about?
So growing up, I thought that I was just going to be that single fun aunt that the kids came over and they just had a good time and then they left.
Okay.
I was always more so career focused, career oriented. So like marriage and family, I knew it was something that I wanted, I think, but it was like somewhere down the lines. It's like, yeah, I'll get to that eventually. I'll get to that point at some time. But for me, relationships and marriage wasn't necessarily something that was taught and instilled upon me as something that was to be valued. In a sense, like to be a wife wasn't like an accomplishment. It was something that you did, but it wasn't necessarily something that you had to achieve and strive for.
Right.
And I think a part of that had to do because I grew up in a single parent household. So it was just my mom, and my mom worked her butt off. So for me, my images that I received was like this single, strong powerhouse of a woman that handled all her business and took everything that she needed for herself. And I've seen my mom have like boyfriends throughout the years. And it was like, yeah, this is somebody that, you know, she's in a relationship with, she has fun with, but ultimately she's a strong Black woman. She don't need no man. And so for me, that was kind of what my thought process was like, you know, will I like to have one? Sure. Do I feel like I need one? No. But what I felt like I needed was the education and a good career so I can have my own money and take care of myself. So if I had a man, it was extra, but I didn't have to rely on one. So that was my biggest thing growing up is don't ever feel like you have to rely on a man.
Okay.
Which that wasn't necessarily the thing that my mom was telling me, but for me, it was just important that I be able to do that myself.
Okay. And it's funny, or I don't know, ironic that you had a single mom growing up, but I had my mom and my stepdad in the house growing up, but marriage was not something that I aspired to be. Having a family and kids, that wasn't on my agenda. It's not something that I thought about, you know, how young girls, well, I want to be married and I want to do this. So it's ironic that I even had my, you know, two parents in the home and still had that mindset, because my mom, again, she was with someone, they weren't married, but she still had that do-it-yourself mentality, like I'm going to get it done.
Yeah.
But I also think it's kind of ironic too, because in society we're kind of taught that it's the woman that wants the marriage, it's the woman that, you know, is looking to be the parents and the wife. But in our situation, because I watched your last podcast, it was Vince who was like, yeah, being, you know, married, that's what I wanted. And Adrian's like, well, that's what I wanted for, you know, since I was young. And me and you like, man, no, we don't need them.
But that's something. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I think for me it was mainly because a lot of friends that I had, their parents weren't together. And it was like, I saw how that affected them. I saw that, you know, because they weren't used to that, their, you know, relationships with their girlfriends weren't lasting either. And it was like one of those things where I did not want that for myself. So I was watching other people like, man, he don't look happy. he's in a relationship with someone that he doesn't even want to be with. And some people don't even like think about marriage. That's not even a thing that's on their mind. They're just like, we're just going to be together forever. Some people don't even believe in marriage. So it's like, I knew I wanted that for myself, because I didn't want to end up being in a relationship, it not working out, then, you know, having to find someone else. That whole starting over thing, the starting over dating, all of that stuff, I did not want to do. I hated dating over and over again. Getting to learn someone over and over again was a lot of work.
Yeah, that's
a lot of work.
Yeah, that's how I was. I'm like, okay, it's like, oh man, I gotta change up, or I gotta get stuff, or I gotta learn what they like and they don't like. But my friends, they was my age, but they always had the women they dated was older. So I thought, you know, maybe I need an older woman or something, because they never got nobody. Your mom was the youngest that I dated. So that's part of the reason why I have some problems.
It's funny you say that, because I only was like really into older women. I don't know what it was.
You are your father's child. Okay, honey, did you have anything else before I go to the next one?
No.
Okay. So we also talked about your expectations. Sometimes the examples that we see give us a perspective or an expectation on marriage, what would you all say were your expectations or your perspective on marriage? Whether you didn't want to be married or wasn't thinking about married, or just what was your perspective on marriage or your expectations?
So because of how my grandparents' household was, my grandma is very much so the powerhouse of the household. Like my grandpa, he works, he always works, he brings in money, but not a dollar is spent without my grandma knowing. Not a bill is paid without my grandma knowing. So I kind of had this mindset that marriage is, teamwork, but it kind of went against what the old school sitcoms would show in terms of, the man is the provider, the man is the one that brings in the money, right, and the woman is the one that takes care of the home. Right. Versus like, no, I'm pretty sure my grandma made more money than my grandpa did. Mm-hmm. I can't confirm it because I would never ask them, but I just right. I knew what her job was and I knew what his job is. And to me, it makes sense that her job made more money.
Okay.
Yeah. But my expectations was different because my grandma worked. She had a high paying job. They had a nice house. They had a maid. They didn't come every day, really? But at least they had someone that came in and would clean the household. So I didn't necessarily have this mindset of, the woman is the one that's supposed to stay in the house with the baby and keep the household, and the man is the one that's supposed to pay the bills. Like, hey, we're a partnership. What my skills are, I'm going to bring to the table. What your skills are, you're going to bring to the table, because that's what I saw with my grandparents. My grandfather is a very hard worker. He is not good with money. Okay. My grandma is fantastic with money. So she was the one that made sure the bills were paid and all the expenses were taken care of. So for me, it was important that in my marriage, in my relationship, that my husband saw me as a partner and not just someone that was like keeping his house, that he was like, I wasn't trying to be a kept woman. I was trying to be someone that, like, what are you bringing to this table? Because my mindset was, in the one marriage that I saw, my grandma was bringing a lot to the table. Mm-hmm. And my grandpa had to step up to meet that, in my opinion. My grandpa's a great man, but that's how my grandma is a powerhouse. Okay. So for me, I thought I was a powerhouse too. So it's like, I have my table that I can maintain myself. So if I'm going to commit myself to a marriage and a relationship, I have to have a partnership where we're both bringing something to this table and we're maintaining this table together. That was kind of like my expectation of what can we do to bring our individual skill sets to complement each other so that we can continue to grow individually and as a unit within this marriage.
Oh, that's good. So it's like, okay, what are you bringing to the table? What can you add to my life? And I'm going to add to your life as well. So it's not, some people think marriage is 50-50, but no, we got to bring 100 and 100. So
yeah, exactly.
Bring 100% to the table.
Well, I saw it 50-50. but
come on up.
Yeah, but I feel that we both work because I seen my mother, how she struggled, and father, he wasn't in our life. So I figured, well, she work, I work, and we both won't have to struggle, because it's a more challenging when you're by yourself and you're trying to achieve a goal. But I figured two makes it all better. So so that was my thought as expectation.
Well, like I said, and like Brandy was saying, the 100% is like, you don't give just half. Mm-hmm. You don't come and bring half to the table and I'm going to keep the other half for myself, but you bring 100% of who you are and what you have to offer.
Well, that's the new millennial ways now. But
he old school. He's stuck in his
old school was 50-50. That's all I used to hear. 50-50. So
right.
Yeah. So.
And Adrian, what about you as far as your expectation or your perception?
As far as me, like Brandy mentioned, the whole bringing to the table from both of us. I didn't learn that until I got into this relationship. It was one of those things where, because I was watching sitcoms or other people, I thought the man was just supposed to bring in the money. So I was, working a lot, had multiple jobs, trying to make sure I could do this, and this. And in relationships I was in, they were proving me right because it was like I was doing all the work. But as soon as I got into this relationship, it was like a whole different scenario. I didn't know what to do. I ended up getting spoiled to the point, or I'll say comfortable, to the point where I thought I'd let her handle the money management and I just work. But then I realized going forward into the relationship, it needed to be, like you said, 100% from both of us. So I needed to make sure not only am I bringing in money, but I'm also participating in making sure the household is kept up, and making sure like, you know, I'm doing what I need to do in terms of like now that, you know, the baby now and stuff like that, just making sure I'm doing my part in the relationship, as well as making sure I'm not putting it all on me and making sure I'm not putting it all on her. We're doing this as a team, as a unit, essentially. And, you know, it's been the best decision in terms of how we handle our finances and stuff, because I'm doing way better in saving now than I ever was.
Yeah, you are.
than I ever was. So I actually appreciate this, and everything that I saw on TV and other families was false. And this is really what a real relationship is, in my opinion.
I wouldn't even say that it's false. It's just like not one narrative fits all. That may have been the scenario that worked best for them, or at least they thought worked best for them, but that you didn't necessarily have to fit this mold that was kind of pushed onto you with the sitcoms and with Friends. Is that, yeah, that's one way of doing it, but it doesn't have to be the only way to do it. You have to figure out what's going to work best for you.
I agree. And even in that, with the because we even talked about it, you all have a different generation. Ours was the Cosbys, and you know, Vince brought up the Brady Bunch. So we watch these sitcoms, and we have to keep in mind that even they're actors. It's not realistic. You know, some principles that we can take out is like what Brandy was saying. Some things may work, a principle here and a principle there, but we have to keep in mind, which we can lose that. We can lose a sense of reality when we say, okay, this is not real. This is just a sitcom. It's just 30-minute show, and it's all, you know, we don't know the background. There was so many stories that you hear later that was going on behind the scenes with the Brady Bunch. Or look at where Bill Cosby is right now. So these are situations that we have to be realistic, but there are some nuggets that we can pull out in those TV shows and those programs. The one thing that stood out when you both were talking was whatever your skill set is, that you bring that to the table. And it may not be, if Adrian may be a better cook, where the stigma back then, the women have to cook, but if he's a better cook, then he cook. Who's ever skilled at whatever that is, if a person better at the finances than but to be a part of it. I know Vince was saying that early in our marriage, he just expected me to handle the finances, where now he got a perception that he need to be involved. And did you want to elaborate on that? Yeah, because I thought, I mean, y'all playing the way y'all playing it, it's good. I mean, if we thought like that, yeah. I mean, for me, that's just pretty good there, because. But I was talking about what you spoke on in our finances. Well, our finances, yeah, because my mother was at home, and she dealt with the bills, so I thought it was the woman's responsibility to deal with all the finances, because that's what you saw. Well, it set a kind of view of what I thought with a woman in a household. They always say that the house is the woman's, and anything else outside that the man has to deal with. But as far as that, the house is hers. So, whatever she says goes, or in the house, as long as it's in the house, what she wants in the house, but that's what I've seen growing up. So, yeah. And I was, he didn't elaborate, but I was specifically saying now that he talked about, now he realizes that he has to be more involved in the finances. So we kind of collaborate. Sundays is our day that we sit down and we go over the finances, where in the past it was just, the money come in and I handle it. And if something go wrong, I was responsible. But now he's taking ownership of it, and he's taking responsibility for it as well. So that was the point that I was trying.
Oh, that's what you want me to
say. I mean, you brought it to me, so I was just trying to get you.
No. Well, I mean, because it's true. Because not to put so much on like they do, that I'm not putting a lot on you. But I guess the point what you're saying. We come together because the finances can go a certain way where, with my expectation, thinking that it's being handled properly, but sometimes it doesn't. So it's good that both of us get involved, because I felt in that part where I wasn't involved, managing the finances.
And that was pretty much, that's the facade that we think that one person is taking care of this, and I don't have to be hands-on.
Yeah.
But even if that person is skilled at it, if we want 100% participation, we have to be involved in it, even if it's a minor part, just to know what's going on.
Yeah,
Right.
and I think for me that's super important too, because with life you never know what happens, and I would hate for it to be a situation where I'm taking care of something 100% or Adrian's taking care of something 100% and the other person is oblivious to it, and then life happens, and now that person who we thought was handling it can't. Right. So what are you going to do? Exactly. And I don't ever want to be put in a situation where we're struggling because there was this expectation from one person to handle it all, and now that the tables have turned, we can't. So you mentioned, I said, kind of playing to each other's strengths, which is important, but also being willing to share your knowledge on those strengths so that the other person can grow as well. Adrian mentioned before, finances were kind of my thing. That's my jam. I've been very passionate about financial literacy and being financially independent and financially capable. That's a strength of mine. Cooking, that's a strength of mine. Cleaning, not so much. But Adrian he's cleanly, he's very organized, he's very detail oriented when it comes to maintaining the house in that way. So whereas he had to kind of step up and come to the table with his cleaning, but also being willing to take financial responsibility. Once he got to the table, I had to, bring what I offered to the table, but also be willing to take some of that from the table as well, in terms of being more organized, being more cleanly. It's still a work in progress, but I'm better than what I was. Right. So being mindful of that too, in the sense of knowing your skills and using them to your advantage, yes, but also being willing to work as a unit so that now my skill is your skill and your skill is my skill. And that's what I mean in terms of bringing 100% versus 50-50. So my 50 would be financial literacy. His 50 would be cleaning. But now I'm 100 because I can do it all and he can do it all and we do it all together.
Right.
Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Now those expectations, after you have these, I don't want to say preconceived notions, but you have these perceptions and these expectations. Now, after you've gotten married, did anything change? Did your expectations change? Because we have, I think Brandy mentioned, you saw your granddad working, and Vincent even mentioned in our previous podcast that he saw the man was the provider. He'd bring home the money and, these things. So after you all got married, did you feel, number one, that your expectations were realistic, and were they met?
I'll probably say my expectations going in, once I was in it, it was, no, it wasn't the same. It was different in terms of, I realized I did not have to work so much. I didn't have to work 2 to 3 jobs, because me doing that would mean I would be lacking in other areas. And that's not what I wanted to do in the relationship. I wanted to make sure I was meeting her, if not halfway, at least some way, to the best of my ability. Brandy mentioned that everything that we learned growing up in our households, where she learned finances from her grandmother, I learned cleaning from growing up in my parents' household. I also, got better with finances. So it's like we were learning, different stuff from watching each other as well in this relationship. So she would see me cleaning and, that would probably inspire her. I would see her working on whatever financial stuff and that would inspire me. And it, that wasn't in my expectations at all. I didn't even think that was going to be on the table. I thought it was just going to be me just working and that's it. I work, I come home, go to sleep, eat, and do the same thing over and over again. That's what I thought the cycle was. But doing this now, I realize I can still have fun. I can still, do the adult thing. I can, we have a son now where I'm still, being an adult, but at the same time, I'm still learning how to make time for myself and, staying healthy, to the most part. And
just kind of find that balance. Because I would say you're a lot more financially stable with this one job than you were when you were working the 3 jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, so it's definitely those are the things that I would say were not in my expectations or something that I thought that I'd be experiencing in this marriage, but I'm glad I am.
That's great.
That's great.
Yeah. So I think for me, it wasn't necessarily having expectations of him, but more so being mindful of what expectations of his that I wasn't going to succumb to.
Okay.
But we kind of set those early because we lived together before we got married. And so before we moved in together, we sat down, we had a conversation like, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is what this is going to look like. This is how our finances are going to look. This is how we're going to handle the household. This is who's going to cook when, who's going to clean when, who's responsible for what financially. Because what I'm not going to be is somebody's I'm not your mama. I'm not your maid. I'm not your housewife.
Right.
Because I have a career. So I can't be a housewife and have a career and bring things to the table. So there's going to have to be a balance and there's going to have to be give and take. And there's going to be, yes, as the man, you have to be able to financially provide. Just have to be able to financially provide your part because I'll provide mine. As long as you provide yours. Just like I'll provide some delicious home cooked meals 4 days a week, but 3 days a week, you're going to have to provide me with some delicious home cooked meals. And whoever cooks, the other person cleans. And so kind of setting those expectations within the relationship and establishing it within the relationship from the beginning. So therefore, there wasn't this automatic shift. Because I think there's this expectation like, oh, I was married now. This is what a wife is, or this is what a husband is. It's like, no, this is our relationship. Right. We just have a legal title to it, but it's still our relationship and we have to figure out what's going to work best for us. So I think kind of setting those guidelines early, being flexible, obviously, because there's going to be times where we have to be flexible, but kind of setting those guidelines early so that there's no room for assumptions about what somebody's expectations is. Like, this is me. This is what you're going to get. You can take it or you can leave it. So that was more so what it was for me coming into it. And I think because I was very forthcoming about who I was as a person and who I am within a relationship and setting that early, I haven't seen that big of a difference on my end in terms of the relationship versus marriage. I will say he does have more free time within our marriage as opposed to when we were just dating, just because he's made a lot of very financially smart choices and decisions in terms of his job and his career. So that he can have that balance of, yes, I'm going to be a provider, but I don't need you to be just a provider. You need to be my friend. You need to be my husband, my companion. You need to be the person I'm going on trips with, that I'm going to restaurants with. I can't do all this if you're working 18, 19 hours a week. I mean, a day, there has to be a balance. You have to have that work-life balance. And I think that for me, I think has been the shift and the change through the course of our relationship and into marriage. It's just finding that balance to be in the marriage.
Okay, that's very good. And I saw a contrast when you all were talking, and I don't know if it's generational because our generation, we weren't forthcoming. So there were a lot of assumptions. It was the communication wasn't there. We didn't have the experience to know to build a relationship. And I don't know if it was just us or if it, well, no, I do know, because talking to others that's in our age group that got married early, they were saying that we kind of just let life happen. We didn't think it through. We didn't sit down and say, okay, you're going to do X, Y, and Z. I'm going to do A, B, C. We didn't come up with that. So I commend you both for even having that, you know, bringing that to the table and having the tenacity to, or the forthcoming to put that all on the table at the beginning. It was, we just kind of let life happen and we just roll with the punches, as they say.
Well, I'm inspired by, you know, how they put together like that's what you call a team.
Right,
play.
Exactly. And go ahead. I'm sorry.
Because y'all show team effort between you two, you know, and that's a good example, you know, because it'll help a lot of marriage, you know, what y'all did, because we, like I said, we didn't plan nothing. We didn't communicate. I just got on one knee and say, will you marry? And she said, yes. And we just walked down the aisle and got rice thrown at us. That's about it. So. And
the funny part about it, we see that it's romanticized on television and getting on the knee, but the work, nobody talks about the work. And that's part of this interview that we're having. We want the people to know that it's not all romantic. It's you have to roll your sleeves up. It's got to be some work done. And you've all been married how many years?
3.5. And
look how much you have accomplished in 3.5 years. And we've been married 34.
35.
And
I'm pretty sure it's 34 because Adrian's going to be 33 this year. So.
Thank you, Brandy. It's 34.
I'm putting the dating part in there.
But I was just saying how just, you made me lose my thought. 34 years. It took us until, you know, the latter part of those years to get where you all are in just 3.5 years. That's the point that I was trying to make, that contrast of where you all are now. It took us 30 years to get to this point.
Well, you know, I think we really didn't have a real understanding of our marriage to is actually when we moved down here, became, you know, nest free.
Yeah, empty nesters.
Because we got the fighting, argument, you know, arguing. It's like two strangers in the house, because I think because I worked so much and only saw her occasionally throughout the day, throughout the night. We go to church, I sleep, wake up, go to work. You know, we may take some vacation trips. I didn't know what fun. My man was on money. I'm trying to make. I got to go to work. So, you know, working 2 40-hour jobs and then doing home improvement on the side and then being a deacon of the church. I don't think I had any.
He didn't have anything to give.
Look, I didn't even have a crack to give, you know. So, but in that sense, I didn't know my wife. Yeah, and I think that's what we missed out on.
Yes, I totally agree, and I think that's part of the reason. Well, due to the fact that we just let life happen. Yeah. We didn't plan for it, and we weren't taught that relational part. So we were just taught, we just saw you get married and not thinking about the work aspect of it. I know the Bible talks about when a man and woman, you know, get married, they leave their family and they cleave to one another, but we didn't even know what to put into that mix. It's like, we didn't know what we're bringing to the table. Yeah. We didn't have anything to bring or even have the mindset to talk about it. So you all, we just commend you because you're, you know, mature and you have the mindset that you want, what you want and you know what you expect from one another. And you have that communication, that friendship, that relationship. Yeah. So we're that is a very admirable relationship that you both have. And I just go ahead.
I'll say thank you. I appreciate that because I was kind of laughing in my head because, you know, you say that, you know, we're very mature, we have conversations, but I think to a certain extent, I'm an over communicator. So I didn't necessarily leave a lot of space for there to not be communication within our relationship.
Okay. Yeah.
Which I know it's probably a little bit tough for him because he wasn't a huge communicator. And whereas I was the type of person like, hey, whether we want to talk about this or not, I feel some type of way. So we gonna talk about it. And we had some ugly moments, some ugly conversations, but those are conversations that we had to help us move forward. Because I was always the type of person, I'd rather have this ugly conversation now and move forward than it to continue to be this unspoken ugliness, for lack of better words. So I guess in some aspect of it, it's maturity, but it was probably also stubbornness on my part because we don't talk about it. So,
but essentially, it's a learning process. You know,
Yes.
it's you learn and you grow. It's
Yes.
it's one of those
I
things
agree.
where when you're first getting into a relationship, you don't know what to expect. So when the arguments do happen, I'm with Brandy. I feel like you just gotta go through it together and let the argument happen, and that's the only way you can prevail. I feel like if you're not at least arguing or having some type of altercation in a relationship, that's not a real relationship. Come on, it's got to be some type of some type of friction somewhere, whether it's small, whether it's something. But that's how it's gonna help you grow. That's how it's gonna help you maintain a stronger relationship, because then you have an understanding. You're listening to each other. You're learning. Going in, even Brandy was like, we have to be flexible when we first started out. She mentioned the cooking thing. I was cooking basic stuff. I was cooking hot dogs, French fries, hamburgers, some
things.
And I had to be flexible to eat it because I said, if you gonna cook, so I gotta eat what you put in front of me.
And then with Brandy mentioned she wasn't the best at cleaning, but I understood that. I knew she was allergic to dust, so I was doing the dust and vacuuming stuff. I knew that mostly she could do was dishes in kitchen or kitchen stuff and bathroom stuff, and I was going to do the vacuuming and everything else. But essentially, that's us being flexible. And if we had any issues with how the relationship was going, we would talk it out. That was the most important thing for me, was communication. Like, I always wanted to do that, but I didn't know how.
Okay.
I didn't know how to communicate before I got into this relationship, so I had to learn that. And I appreciate Brandy for being there to guide me into that aspect of the relationship, so I can get better and kind of continue that going forward and instill that in the young one back here. So
that's
good. I'm proud of that you're willing to stick with it and learn.
Right.
And learn your wife, because that's what makes a strong relationship of a marriage, I believe. So to learn
Absolutely.
one another. And unfortunately, we didn't have that opportunity because we didn't plan. So we had, when you all listen to the last podcast, we had Adrian, right away, and it didn't allow us to have a relationship with each other.
Yeah.
And my focus, you became my priority.
Yeah.
So it didn't allow us to get to know each other. Then another baby, and then another child, and then you have these buffers now between us where we don't have to communicate with one another because we're busy. He's busy working. I'm busy, with household or with the kids, because the majority of our marriage, I didn't work outside the home, or when I did work in the church, I was able to take the kids with me. It was really flexible that I could still maintain the house and do all these things, but I didn't mind being that domestic. I didn't, I didn't have a career minded, and it's for whatever works for you. And it's just, nobody ever talked about education or career. So that wasn't my focus. But we didn't have that. So this is for another podcast after the kids are gone. Like he said, we have to learn each other. We have to find out, who are you? And like he said, we argued all the time because it's like, you're not who I thought you were. I have to figure out who is this man, who is this woman.
Yeah, not understanding the whole situation, because it's like, wait a minute here, I got to do all this by myself. So we had to reinvent our marriage. The last question that I wanted to ask, you all have a son now, and we talked about in our podcast how our relationship, the marriage, shifted or changed after we had a son. My perspective changed, which Vincent's didn't. So he had the same mindset. He wanted to continue to do what we did before as far as a married couple. But now our priorities change. Would you all say that there has been any changes since now you have a son?
See, I think for me, with being a parent, I had more expectations in terms of being a parent and him being a father more so than I did of him being a husband.
Okay.
And that was because of my personal experience growing up in the household. I had a completely absent father.
Mhm.
So for me, it was most important that whoever I was with someone I felt would be a good, solid, present father. So I had this huge expectation in my mind of what kind of life I wanted to bring my child into in terms of parenting. And so I think for me, it's changed in the sense of like expectations being exceeded by reality, because I always knew Adrian has always talked about wanting to be a parent. That's something he's always mentioned from day one in our relationships. Like he wants to be a parent, he wants to be a father, he wants to be a present father.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I just wanted somebody that I didn't feel like I was alone raising my child with.
Okay.
And I think just our definition of partnership for me shifted with the baby, because there's different aspects of it that when you see on TV, you see in families. I saw in a single parent household, my mama did everything
Mm-hmm.
in terms of raising the kids.
Yeah.
But I knew that wasn't what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that was like an expectation that I was outwardly putting on Adrian, but in my mind, I just knew that I wanted a partner in my parenting of my child.
Okay.
And I think that's like the biggest change is that like I get to see this side of Adrian that I never saw before. I got to see this like component to him is like his compassion, his love for our son, his desire to be a parent, his ability to be present and to be there and to be a team. Like a lot of my friends or that had kids or people I know that had kids, like, oh, you must be so tired because you have a baby, you must be getting no sleep. Like, no, I sleep. My man helped me take care of the baby. Like we tag team, we got us a system going on,
Right.
Yes.
And so for me, that was the biggest thing, is like kind of getting to see him in his element. I think being a parent is something that God placed him on this earth to do. He's so kind and so caring and so loving and so active with our son. They're like two little peas in a pod.
Yeah.
And I'm just along for their beautiful ride. But so for me, that's been the biggest change. Like he's always been supportive of me, but I've always been fairly independent too. So it's like we take care of each other, but he can take care of himself, I can take care of myself. We just take care of each other together. But just kind of seeing how he handles our son, this little one that can't take care of himself, and his willingness to do all these things that I didn't see men do growing up, because there were no men in the household. I didn't see men feeding babies. I didn't see men changing diapers. I didn't see men giving babies baths. That was something that was just not in my radar, because my mom did it all.
Okay.
But I have like a partner bringing 100% to the table all the time. If I need a break, if I seemed overwhelmed, like I don't even have to ask, he's just there. And for me, that's been like the biggest blessing in terms of our marriage, but also just our relationship in general, just having someone that is so present. Like I wanted someone that was be there, but he's like there,
right?
Which is really good. Which is a great feeling. Yeah,
that's good. That's good.
Now, what
Great
about
job,
you, Adrian?
I was gonna say, again, I didn't have any friends who had their fathers in their life, so I didn't get any type of outlook or view from the outside looking in at their relationships. But having a father of my own, it was also a contradiction or confusion, because even though I had a dad, he was always working. So it wasn't like I saw what I saw in our household in terms of sitcoms. It was like a whole different scenario. But I wanted to make sure growing up that I was in my my kid's life, and I didn't want to put work I didn't want to make work as an excuse as to not be able to be in my kid's life. So I made sure to just make that change and do what I had to do to be, in his life. I will say I did not think that it would be this hard, and that's not something people talk about.
Yeah.
It's not easy. Kids are not easy at all. And I think that's overshadowed a lot. They talk about how beautiful it is, pregnancy and everything, but they don't talk about the cost. They don't talk about like the sleepless nights most of the time, the trying to learn the baby and the baby trying to learn us. Like that stuff it's still a learning process till this day. And going into this, I thought it was just going to be, I feed it, I burp it, I put it to sleep, and that's it. That was my mindset. I was thinking when we were at the hospital, I was thinking, or before we even got to the hospital, I was like, this is going to be a normal birth. The baby's going to come out on a due date, and that was it. But no, the baby came like 8 weeks early, 6 weeks early. The whole process was a very long process. Even having the situation where he was a premature baby, so we had to we couldn't treat him like a normal baby would be, so we had to make a lot of sacrifices, make a lot of changes within the way we were living here at home. And I would say it's even though it's been challenging, it's definitely been rewarding, because the stuff that we've been doing is I see it, it working. I see him, he's growing into a beautiful baby boy, and that all stems back to us working together as a team and just being on the same accord, the same page. But yeah, it's not something they teach you in school, man. A lot of people overshadow that. They be wondering like, why y'all should have more kids. Like, no.
And I think for me too is like, I feel like having a kid, now I see how having kids can change the course of someone's relationship. Like I know a lot of times people say, having kids is kind of what shifted the trajectory of their marriage, whether it was a positive trajectory or a not so positive trajectory. Like I can see how kids can come in between a marriage, because they take 100% of your time and 100% of your energy and 100% of your effort. And if you're not willing to find that balance, you become so consumed with being parents that you forget to be your own person. You forget to be a husband. You forget to be a wife. You just like, I have this person that's relying on me 100% of the time. So this is where 100% of my energy is going to go. And so I think for me, that's been the biggest challenge, is finding out how to have that balance between being Brandy, the career woman, Brandy, the wife, Brandy, the person, as well as Brandy, the mom. So trying to kind of find that balance and make sure that within our relationship that we're still finding time to be together and do things together and enjoy one another outside of just sharing the child.
Right. Now, how long were you all together before you had the baby?
Let's see. We started dating in 2015. He was born in 21, so about 6 years.
Okay, so y'all had about 6 years to get to
6 years, something like that.
Yeah, we were dating at the end of 2014.
Okay.
So yeah, about that many.
Okay, so you all had a good amount of time to build a relationship, to learn one another,
learn each other.
Yeah, so that's real good. That's something that I admire, because of course we didn't have that. We met, and then 10 months later we were married, and then 12 months later we had Adrian. So we didn't have that. And just listening to Adrian and the thing, that Vince, he missed that, because he didn't, it's almost like he didn't have the time to enjoy his son because he didn't get a chance to enjoy his wife. So he missed out on that, and he missed out on both, really. So now we have to make up for that time. And unfortunately, fortunately, we are able to make up that time now that it's not too late. We can learn each other all over again. And we're in a better place. We're more mature. We know what we want. We have a more level head. We're more mature and things like that. But I wanted to also say that I had an opportunity to stay with you all for 3 weeks, and I just admired. I saw the teamwork firsthand, and I'm like, wow, this is, great. I was calling Vince, saying they do this and they do that, and they did that. It's like bath time, and one is taking the clothes off, and one is bathing them, and then one drying them off. And I'm like, they are like 100% in this together. It's not like one person, okay, but it's like, no, it's time for Xander bath, and one person not sitting in the chair, but they doing this together. So I really admired that, and I commend you both. You're doing an excellent job, and God has really blessed you. I could see the hand of God on your life, on your marriage, and you're such an inspiration to other couples. And I know, like you said, it's not easy. The parenting thing, it gets a little bit easier, but it's always going to be challenges.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But long as, like you both said, you're willing to do the work, you're willing to make the necessary adjustments. Like you both mentioned, being flexible, that's very important in a relationship. And I was telling another group of ladies that marriage is not an option. And they were saying, divorce is not an option. They said, yes, it is an option. And I don't mean that in the sense that you can't divorce, but when you have the mindset of, we're going to work through this when challenges come. We're not going to choose to divorce. We have a choice, but we're not going to make that choice. Coming into a marriage, I think is important to communicate. Sometimes it's something that's a deal breaker. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We can say going into the marriage, X, Y, Z, or A is the deal breaker, but everything else we're going to work through. Mm-hmm. And just to know that up front, I think it gives you the mindset that we're in this, we're doing this. So no matter what you're going through, no matter what I'm going through, we're going to work it out together. And I think Adrian said that as well. So I appreciate you all. Any final comments that you all wanted to make before we get ready to wrap up?
Well, I want to say I see a different aspect of a relationship through you guys. I think when I first met Brandy, I think when we first went over to their apartment and they invited us over because you was going over there, you and the kids. But when I went over there, when he said take your shoes off at the door, and then he said, "Daddy, take your shoes off the door." Then he prepared dinner. I felt appreciated about. I felt special when I came to your home, and I seen a different out view of how I was when you was in a relationship, but we was younger, but we was more like we was married in the sense of roommates probably. So we had, but when we had you, I love being around you. But I still, like I said, didn't want the interference with my wife because I'm still trying to be with her. But I am inspired. I mean, I'm inspired by you guys because it taught me a lot, and because at the point we had separated for a bit when we was younger because I was partying a lot and coming home. Going out at night and sun is up and I'm coming home and birds is tweeting and stuff like that. And she got tired of it and she had Adrian, she had to tend to. I didn't understand, being a father, but I know I had responsibility, but I still going to be pretty much I was selfish. Let's put it that way, because I wanted to still enjoy my life because my expectation was I'm gonna get married, and because I saw my friends had their wife and they going out and partying, hanging out, and I wanted to bring my wife. I wanted the wife and bring her along. I didn't want to be dating, so I wanted to have a wife. But when we separated, it's about the individual, especially on the half that that he wants to stay intact, want to remain married. Yeah. So I said, because my father, he never remarried, but he lived with a woman it was 13 of us, but he decided to date a woman that got 6 kids. So he didn't tend to us. So we really didn't have a father. So in that, I said, well, my mind was made up where I'm not going to allow no one to raise another man to raise my child. So that would kept me, wanted me to work, make my,
make the marriage stay in it.
make
and be
it
there for
work
your
out,
children.
to work out my marriage. So
Right.
Yeah,
And that's good, because sometimes we need that motivation, even though you may not have had the time with me to be the full dad that you wanted, because you didn't, like you said, you were selfish, but you also broke that cycle, of not being there. You were maybe not 100%, but you knew the part to do to stay and to be the provider. And then now you have this information, and I appreciate the fact that even though we're older, we can still learn from you all. And we're still growing. We can use some of the things that you all have spoken for our own relationship. So I appreciate that age has no boundaries, that we can glean from one another, and we can, look at this, the generations now, and to be able to grow. So I commend you both, and we thank you for coming on the show and sharing your perspective from your generation and from your time together with one another.
Yes.
So,
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you all.
I did want to say, I commend you and mom as well, Dad, because seeing what you guys went through growing up, it also inspired me to not have to, I guess, repeat the same stuff or the same mistakes. So that way, I mean, of course, I'm gonna have my own mistakes and I'm gonna learn or whatever, but seeing what you guys went through, but still being able to stay together, it was really inspirational to see you guys making it 34, almost 35 years now. And that's, that type of mentality. You said it, Mom, where you said, divorce doesn't have to be an option. That was my mindset going in. Is like, I would rather talk it out or work it out to the best of my ability.
He says that so much.
Before it even gets to that point.
Right.
That's not something I want to do. I'd rather work it out and talk about it.
That's good. Yeah.
So I just want to say thank y'all for sticking with it and working it out, and being an inspiration to probably those that's outside looking in that doesn't even know the deep stuff that it that is involved. But thank y'all.
Oh, thank you all. I appreciate it.
Well, I learned something today from
Yes, we both did. So we thank everyone for listening, and that will conclude Conversations with the Popes. Please come back next time and click the bell so that you will receive notifications for our next Conversations with the Popes.